Hello and welcome to the Driver Hire podcast. My name's Tony from Driver Hire Croydon and Sutton.
Hello, I'm Gary from Driver Hire in Colchester.
We represent two of Driver Hire Nationwide's network of over 100 offices. We decided to get together to create a series of regular podcasts for people who want to know more about driver hire, but principally to provide hints, tips and tricks to help our drivers be the very best that they can be. Hi Gary, how you doing?
Very well, Tony. I don't quite like being on the screen. I enjoyed being with you a couple of weeks ago when we went out and recorded a video, but you didn't have to touch my knee though.
Well, I don't think the car was big enough not to touch your knee, but it's also really nice recording a podcast in the same room, which is something we've never done before.
No, it was very good, and I believe it helped you with the editing because it was easy with sound levels and everything else. Something way above my head.
Yeah, honestly, that's the way to do it. I think the time spent driving from Colchester down to London is probably about the same time as the editing time normally. So, you probably saved me a bit. Yeah.
Good. Well, if you take me out to the pub afterwards, you might tempt me.
Maybe. So, Gary, I know you are an observant man.
I am.
And you will have noticed that there's three people on this call.
Yes, I can see there was a third person on this call with us.
There is, yeah. So actually, it's a very special episode this week because this week is National Lorry Week, and National Lorry Week is an RHA initiative, and we're very privileged to be joined by Tom Cornwell of the RHA. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Gary. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And it's, I think you are very privileged, actually. I think you're the very first person ever to be a guest twice on the Driver Hire podcast. So this is yet another Driver Hire podcast first.
No, the privilege is all mine. And I appreciate you having me back to help celebrate this important week. And hopefully it will be of benefit to your listeners, and hopefully they'll enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure. Thank you.
Good. Did it used to be called Love the Lorry Week in the past as well, Tom?
It did, yes. And Love the Lorry was the hashtag that we used to use. I think National Lorry Week has always been the overarching name, but Love the Lorry used to be one of the should we say catchphrases that we used to use, if you like. But yeah, 7th year this year, so it certainly is growing, and I've seen that across the 7 years as well.
Okay, so National Lorry Week is one of the RHA's key initiatives, but for those that don't know National Lorry Week, Tom, what is it all about?
Well, really, it's highlighting the vital role that the logistics industry plays in our daily lives. Many members of the general public might not be aware of Lorry Week. I'm sure they probably won't be, but the idea is that we get them involved and up to speed with exactly what logistics does for them, and how they rely on it for everything they do day to day. So obviously there'll be a lot of activity around the week, and the idea this year specifically is that we're showcasing the huge variety of careers that logistics has to offer.
Okay, and so what are some of your members doing to celebrate it?
Well, we've seen members, going into colleges and schools. Obviously, we are slightly limited this year because of COVID, naturally, and what we can do. Face to face, certainly, but we have got a roadshow. So we've got a HGV, which is liveried up with National Lorry Week, and that is driving around the country, visiting schools, colleges, and members, to showcase the industry and talk to young people about getting involved and encouraging them to get into logistics.
Being a slightly older age group, we used to have careers advice and so on where people come to the school, and I know it's slightly different and so on, but that's going back to what I would think. You try and entice people into your industry and come and become a policeman or a lorry driver in this case, and it's good to see we're actually getting into the thoughts of the youngsters at a really early age what the logistics industry is.
That's right, Gary. Yeah, and I think that we've seen that certainly having the lorry physically there has obviously gathered a lot of attention from the students. That they're excited about what they see, and I think we need to use that to encourage young people. Or someone who might not necessarily know what they want to do, or they want to consider something new. And I think that encouragement, hopefully we can capitalise that and train up the next generation of drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I recently had an open day, was a driver appreciation day, and the client kind of enters a couple of lorries to show people around. And my wife went inside one of the big sleeper cabs and so on, and she couldn't believe how nice and plush it is in there now with the TV, microwave, fridge, how much room there was, and so on, like the double bunks. And she was amazed how nice it was.
Exactly, yeah, and it is. And I think that's something where we need to tackle that negative image of the industry, and people obviously have this stereotypical image of what a driver is, what a vehicle is. But if we can tackle that and showcase it to be what it is, encouraging for them, then that's great. That's what we want to achieve.
Okay, so you've done this now this is your 7th year. What have been some of the successful outcomes of National Lorry Week, and what would kind of represent success for the RHA out of this year's event?
Well, I think we've seen that with the logistics industry being the 5th largest employer, and obviously growing. We've seen a lot of, and certainly I've seen personally, a lot of young blood come into the industry, and I think that's a real success story. But that's more of the same is what's needed. So I think what would be successful this year is if we saw more of the same. So more young people come into the industry, more young people considering it as a career path, and even come to speak to us. I love it when I see someone my age come and speak to me about how do I get into logistics, and what's needed to not only be a driver, but also managers, technicians, planners. There's so many different career paths in this industry, and I really do believe it's something for everybody. So what we'd gain out of it would be for someone to come and speak to us and get involved.
Okay. Now, I think I'm probably not over-egging the pudding if I say that words like truck, HGV, lorry have featured in the news quite heavily this summer. And it's something that has been on news reports left, right and centre. And talks of vacancies in the industry, even up to 100,000. But there are, roughly speaking, 500,000 truck drivers in the UK, give or take. So there must be something really good about being a truck driver for so many people to do it. And as you say, Tom, the 5th largest industry in this country is logistics. So there's lots of people doing it. So maybe we could have a chat through about what it is that people like about being a truck driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, I mean, the stats that we've got is there's currently 330,000 people in a HGV driving job. But of course, obviously, there's going to be people that, on top of that, scaffolders, refuse drivers, so yeah, the number could be up to 500,000, like you say, doing that job. So clearly there's got to be positives. And I don't think people always see those positives.
Well, as you know, Tom, both Gary and I have driven trucks for a living in our past, and obviously we work with truck drivers on a daily basis. And so I did ask a few of our drivers leading up to this, explain what we're doing, and said, so what do you like about being a truck driver? And the first obvious answer I got back from the first person I asked was, I like driving. which I know is a kind of a straightforward, obvious answer. But if you are somebody that enjoys driving, and actually lots of people do enjoy driving, well, why not get paid for doing that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's something where there's, if you like being on the open road, you like level of independence. Seeing different parts of the country or even different parts of Europe. It really is a career for you.
I asked the same question of Russ in my office. And who is he's been obviously working for me for a little while, but prior to that, a transport manager, prior to that, a truck driver. And I said to him, so when you did it for a living, what was it that appealed to you? And he said, well, the view out of my office window was constantly changing, and everywhere he was going was different all of the time, and just enjoyed that kind of constant change.
Exactly, every day is different. And, some people, are not built to be sat in an office staring at a computer screen all day, and they want to be out on the open road. They want to be doing, different stuff. And that's what the industry is there for and offers them.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't like long distance lorry driving. I've never got great enjoyment from it. I get a little bit bored. My mind races away. But there's so many different jobs involved, we can do much shorter. And one of them, if I went back on the road, I would do HIAB because I can meet different people when I'm out there. And that's a great attraction to the industry is you don't have to do, you can be a lone person or you can be a friendly and meet people on a daily basis delivering goods.
I think that's true. I think if you like meeting new people all the time, it's fantastic for that. Also, if you've got a limited joke book, then you can tell the same joke to every single one of the people you deliver to all day, and you get the reaction every single time.
Oh, Tony. Right, sorry, I've got to start again after that one. One of the things, I'm not the thinnest person in the world, and when I go out and do things, we've all got a favourite tea bars or cafes we like visiting, and you get to know the people serving, or they like to know what you're having when you go there, and then we get this image of what the driver looks like and so on for you when you stop for your breaks.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of drivers do have an affinity with their favourite cafes and tea bars, and they really like it when they walk into one of those cafes and it's and they just put it down in front of them, milk and two, and they just know what they have. Your usual number 2 breakfast, it's that kind of almost like your local pub, but it's kind of your local cafe along the way.
Well, that's great service as well, isn't it? Because they get to know the driver coming in, have a laugh and a joke. Hopefully, they've got a better joke set than you have, Tony. So it's very good from that point of view.
I think it'd be well to remember it, to be honest.
What, remember what's on the menu or remember the jokes?
Both.
Okay. So, another reason people like the industry is they just like trucks. So, there are, I suppose, from being knee high, there's a certain type of person that really got into, Lego and Tonka trucks and all that kind of thing. And just like that kind of thing, and being involved with that large machinery, all day, every day is just something they want to do.
Yeah, and just leading on with that, Tony, in the past, a lot of people children went out with their dads in the trucks, let's say at a weekend or after school, and they got involved with it from a very young age, or they learned to drive. A guy said to me the other day, I was driving trucks at 11 years old on a quarry, but he's about 60, so that was a good few years ago when health and safety wasn't as hot as it is today.
Did I ever tell you the story about when I first got inside a truck? Did I ever tell you that? When I was... No,
if you did, I can't remember. Now I'm showing my age.
So my parents used to have a series of camper vans, and we go on summer holidays around Europe. And we were in Italy, somewhere near Lake Garda. And in our camper van, we kept all the things that little Tony liked to eat, which was basically tins of baked beans. And by the time we got to Italy, we'd run out of baked beans. And so we went to a supermarket to try and find baked beans, but you can't buy your standard Heinz baked beans in an Italian supermarket. They do something far, far more gastronomically exciting than just a stock tin of baked beans. But my mum happened to notice that there was a tractor unit parked around the back of the supermarket, British registered tractor unit. So she kind of put 2 and 2 together and thought, oh, I wonder. And so she walked off around the back of the supermarket to see this truck and truck driver with sort of me in tow, and said, look, I know it's a bit of a long shot and really cheeky to ask, but you don't happen to have a tin of beans, do you? And lo and behold, he did. And he lifted up his bunk and he got loads of tins of beans, and he gave my mum a tin of beans so that she could feed me for tea. And then he said, would you like to get up and have a look in the lorry? And for me, being kind of knee high, climbing up into this lorry was a big adventure, just the journey to get into the thing. But I can't help thinking that there was a moment then that kind of imprinted in the back of my mind and sort of sowed that seed for the future for me. I think that was one of the reasons I did become a truck driver.
You've definitely not told me that story before, Tony. So that's definitely a first. My memory hasn't gone, but it's a great story.
And something else I wanted to kind of touch on is that you need, obviously, a truck license to drive a truck, but trucks work in such a wide variety of different industries. And I know this is something we've touched on previous podcasts, Gary, and I don't want to do like a great big long list, but do you want to just touch on some of the variety of different things you can do with that license?
Yeah, variety is definitely the best thing, but where I worked prior coming to driver hire, I worked for a company in the sewage industry, and it's basically a tanker that picks up the nastiness that we leave elsewhere of our bodies and so on. And if you can cope with the smell, best job in the world, because you don't do much work, you do loads of hours and you earn loads of money. And it was a really good job from that point of view, because one of the reasons I worked so many hours was to earn the money to be able to do other things. You do a lot of sitting about, or you're putting tubes out to suck up the fluids. Want for better wording. So that's a good example of a tanker type work, and that's on the sewage side. But then you can go the tanker that's most prevalent in the news at the moment is the fuel tankers, which creates a different job altogether, which is much more professional than the sewage side, and earn very good money as well for a lot less hours.
Yeah, and so there's all sorts of different plant that gets carried by trucks. So whether that's tankers, whether it's blowers, whether it's high-abs, whether it's lorry-mounted forklifts or moffats as we know them, there's a whole variety of different things you could be doing where the HGV license is the access point to get into all those different things. And it's also often the case that you'll get truck drivers that have worked in quite a variety of different industries and really enjoyed the change, but having had that basic HGV license to allow them into those different environments.
Yeah, it's not always down to what you think it is. It isn't just the general haulage with the curtain side. It can be a right plethora of goods you deliver. And one of the recent ones we've delivered is a portable surgery department for a local company where they've got a theatre down at a hospital. These temporary items go in, and it's quite an impressive bit of kit. And the driver basically takes it there, then he helps set it up, and then you become a minor electrician or putting blocks down and everything else, and you got some job satisfaction. I helped set up.
Yeah,
all that up is down to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the kind of the big news of this year, and the kind of the last point I wanted to make about why you might want to be a truck driver, is wages have really gone up this year. And we're going to have a little bit of a fact off for old time's sake in a minute, and that's one of my facts to tell you how much they've gone up by. So I'm not going to share that one just yet. But it has become financially a far more attractive place to be than it has before.
Yeah, I've got to throw in, Tony, as been doing this job 9 years now. HGV driver, I feel, has been underpaid for a long time out there, and we're now getting back to levels what they should be for pay to do a good job in a nice piece of equipment. You got the freedom of the road or whatever, and now we're getting the wages to make it worthwhile to come back to the industry if you've left or anything like that.
But I think also, you say underpaid, and that might well be right. But I think the other word that has been thrown around a lot is undervalued. And I know the RHA, Tom, are doing a lot of work on not just the kind of headline earn loads of money driving a truck conversation, but around some of the other things that might attract people into the industry.
That's right, yeah, and I think you quite rightly mentioned the equipment. That's obviously we do see that when we're speaking to drivers, that matters a lot to them. Is the piece of kit they're driving. But also we're doing a lot of work around facilities at the moment, making sure that on the roads toilets are adequate, they're clean, they're hygienic, they're present basically as well. But also things like they've got secure parking overnight, they're not going to be attacked. There's clean showers, hot showers, and a hot meal. And I think that has a big bearing on drivers as well. Aside from wages, which of course is important to everybody, I think in making sure you can go to work comfortably and you're going to be looked after while you're on the road, I think is equally as important.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was watching BBC Breakfast News on Sunday morning. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a group of female truck drivers who are trying to promote females to join the industry. Now we when we were looking at this last year, we found out that only 1% of truck drivers were women, but at that time when we recorded, 10% of test passes were women. So that tells you that it's going in the right direction. There's no reason why you couldn't have 50% of truck drivers eventually being women. But they were they were talking about they're promoting a calendar, a 2022 calendar. It's called Girl Talk. Talk being spelt like Torque Wrench, TORQUE, and they're raising money for a number of charities. But one of the things that one of the ladies said was some of the facilities that she went to, she'd go and have a shower, and she felt like she'd come out dirtier than when she went into the shower. And it's a kind of a funny thing to say, but if somebody feels like that, then clearly that means that the facilities need to be improved. And in my personal opinion, transport facilities around the country, it's probably something that everybody thinks, well, of course they should be good. But it's also one of the things that nobody seems to want to pay for. So logically speaking, when you've got something that everybody thinks we should have, but nobody wants to pay for, that's probably where governments come in.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that's come out of this year, certainly as a positive, is that the general public are now starting to get behind the driver in a positive way. They understand now how vital they are, and we need to start looking after drivers. And I think facilities is a huge part of that. We're seeing so many facilities that are closing down, as I'm sure you guys see as well, which is going in the wrong direction. And the comment you mentioned there from that female driver is not really good enough. I know we have that joke, but it's not good enough, and it's not going to help us attract new talent either.
Yeah, no. So yes, I think there's lots and lots of reasons why people might want to join our industry, and there's clearly work to do still. But like I said at the outset, if we've got up to 500,000 HGV license holders and 2/3 of those kind of active at the moment, there's got to be people enjoying what they're doing, and hopefully we've touched on some of those things.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've been involved with this industry since 1983. Might have been 10 years old when I joined, but
liar.
and I do love it. As many times over the years I thought, oh, I'll leave this industry, but it's something that draws you to this industry. Once you join it, you'll love it.
Okay, so to finish up with, I suggested that because last year on the National Lorry Week, Gary and I did a bit of a fact off, Tom, where we kind of threw interesting lorry facts at each other. And I thought, just as a little bit of celebration of that one, we'd start off. I asked you to do some homework, just a way of forcing you to listen to our podcast, Tom. But so I thought what we'd try and do is pull out each of our favourite facts from the last fact off, and then we're going to come up with some more. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Who wants to kick off?
Go on, then I'll kick off. It seems only fair.
Oh, go on then.
So I have to say, it wasn't. There's no force needed, Tony. It was very enjoyable listening to it, and and I did do my homework. Actually, you'll be pleased to know. But my favourite fact from your last year was definitely that a trailer is something that supports all of its own weight. So we often refer to it as a trailer, but it should actually be a semi-trailer that we refer to it as, not a trailer.
Excellent.
We're all guilty of saying that, so me included. So that certainly was an eye-opener for me.
So I think the point is that the trailer on the back of an Arctic is a semi-trailer, and we've just shortened it in this country to trailer, but most parts of the world, including Europe and America, shortened it to semi. But I think there was a supplementary fact on that, wasn't there, Gary?
Yes, and that was nearly my choice for the why is the fifth wheel called the fifth wheel? And I'm going to Tony explain why it's called the fifth wheel. No, this isn't one of my fact off favourites.
So the point is that big greasy plate that receives the trailer on the back of a tractor unit is the fifth wheel. Everybody knows it as the fifth wheel. But the reason why it's called the fifth wheel is because 20% of the semi-trailer's weight is borne by that big greasy wheel, and 80% is borne by the trailer's own wheels. So yes, that 20% is in fractions 1/5, hence fifth wheel. So yes, semi-trailer, you'll be forgiven for calling it a trailer, Tom. We all call it a trailer, and we use so few drawbars in this country in comparison that I don't think anybody's going to worry too much if you call it a trailer.
Tony, I'll let you go next. I'll get there for the short story in case we're the same.
Well, what's going to happen if I've got the same fact then that you've got? Well, my favourite fact from last year was this absolutely bonkers truck that somebody's created, which was called Shockwave, which has a top speed of 376 miles an hour and a jet engine on the back. And they do specialist shows on airfields and drag strips and stuff. But that wasn't my favourite bit of the fact. My favourite bit of the fact was every time they run this thing, they have to resurface the road afterwards because it's melted the tarmac.
I was just thinking about that. It did remind me because I listened to our podcast again at twice the speed. And apart from it being funny, listening to us going 100 miles an hour, it was just the facts that keep coming out. So we did try and find obscure ones. The one I've gone for isn't such an obscure one, but I think is the biggest issue, what has caused some of our shortages, is the amount of people who pass their test in the year. And not last year, but in 2019, it was 41,500. And I think that's what we're missing from the industry in the last 18 months. They're not trickled through in the quantities that we've been used to. And that has causes the biggest issue. And 40,000 people plus a year taking their test, or passing the test, shall we rephrase that? There's more, I think it was 58,000 tests were taken every year, and what's 41,000 is passed. But that's the figure I went for and I enjoyed. And we've got lots of changes coming up on how you get your license as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. And actually, if you listen to this and you haven't listened to the previous episode, we did a discussion on the changes to the HGV test and how they can facilitate more tests. So, interesting point. Okay, the next thing I set for homework was what's your favourite 2021 fact?
Tom, I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you, Gary. So I've got a non-funny one. I mean, I've got a funny one as well, but I'll do the non-funny one first. We'll finish with the funny one. So I'm actually combining two facts into one, but the word lorry was first seen in English in 1838 when it referred to the luggage truck on a train. And the second part of that was that the word truck actually comes from the Greek word for wheel, which is trokos.
Okay.
So a bit of the historics there of the language used.
Excellent. So what's your 2021 truck fact, Gary?
The girls in the office asked last week, and I thought I'll use this one as an example, is you see the American trucks with a very long nose where the engine sits, but we don't see many of them in the UK. And they wanted to know why we don't see many American-style trucks in the UK. Now, it's to do with the maximum length a vehicle can be with a trailer. And we carry, in fact, Tony, I've got to throw this because you're so good at these figures. Sorry to be put you on the spot here, but you reeled it off to me when we were speaking the other day. And I thought you were just so good at this knowledge.
Oh, dear. Thank you. So the overall length limit in this country for an Arctic is 16 and a half metres, or a drawbar is 18.2. And you're just making me sound like a geek. But the point is that if you and there's lots of benefits of a long nose cab, particularly in terms of ride and stability and all the rest of it, and comfort and cabin space, all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that if you've got all that bonnet sticking out the front, then that's load space that you can't have at the back, and that is the reason why you see so few of them over here.
So it's monetary.
Well, yeah, it is because, the Americans call what we use a cab over, in terms of the cab being over the engine, and a modern cab over, or what we just call a truck. They're far more spacious than they used to be, and there's far better ride, particularly with air suspension and air cabs and and air seats and all the rest of it. So they're not the poor cousin they once were. If it was simply about comfort, it's quite likely that you would choose one of these American-style trucks. But
good. Now, you did sound like a geek saying cab over, by the way.
Sorry. It's an American thing. Sorry.
Come on, okay. Throw us your fact.
Well, my 2021 fact was just, I alluded to it earlier, actually. I just thought it'd be interesting for listeners to understand that in this part of the world, we've raised HGV wages by 40% in this financial year.
40%.
40%. Absolutely huge. So if you're looking for a job, feel free to give me a call.
That's a blatant plug, but 40% is a massive increase. But that's down to a lack of people with the right skill set in your area.
Well, it's simply the market has moved, and we do research on a daily basis to try and make sure we've got the right pay rate. Not too little, not too much. But obviously it'd be easy to put a really, really high figure in, but then we end up charging customers way too much. And obviously, if we wanted to give the customer a really cheap price, we could, but we might not be able to recruit. So our job is all about getting, striking the right balance, and you can only do that by decent research and tracking the market. And that's how the market's moved this year.
Yeah. As a fact, I heard this morning on the radio, on Radio 4, not to sound a geek, but for some reason it was on in the car, wages across the country have gone up 7% recently. So it shows how popular HGV wages have gone up and improved. And hopefully more people will come and join the industry because of it.
Okay. And the last bit of the homework, guys, was a fun fact. So, Tom, what have you got?
Well, I don't know how verifiable this one is, but I thought it was quite good and I had to say it.
If it's spurious and uncheckable, then so much the better. Go for it, Tom.
Okay, so the methane in the flatulence of one sheep could power a small lorry to go 25 miles a day.
Now, that's an impressive fact.
I wouldn't want to be the person harvesting that natural resource. Well, my fun fact to finish us off. I hired a new driver last week, and Mike, welcome to Driver Hire Croydon and Sutton if you're listening. But Mike, prior to working for us, actually worked in Australia driving road trains, and he was telling me some of the interesting things that go on with road trains in Australia. So if you're not familiar, these are 100-ton trucks with 3 trailers, and stupidly long, and way longer than the 16.5 meter length limit we have. But a couple of things he said. The first thing was that there's absolutely no way you could swerve or brake at the last minute if an animal came running in front of you, which is why they have these great big cages on the front called rubars for obvious reasons. But the other thing was some of these roads you might see a sign that says next exit 130 miles or last fuel for 300 miles or something. So you've got a lot of long, dead straight roads. And the thing I found most fascinating was if they come up behind, say, like a caravan and an RV or something, somebody trundling along that they've got to get past, they need a clear kilometre to be able to overtake. And I just can't imagine what that must be like.
Oh, they're phenomenal pieces of kit. I'd like to drive one, not every day, but just have a go with one, Tony. But the thought of something running in front of you and you can't slow down must be quite scary. Yeah,
no, I think so too. Yeah.
It's very similar to your driving in the Caterham, actually.
Yes. So glad you mentioned the Caterham, Gary. So there is a video available on the podcast website where I took Gary out in my Caterham to look at some roundabout signs and learnt a few things that perhaps we didn't know before. But it was a good fun day.
It was very good, and I definitely learned something.
Good.
Not just about your driving either.
Wait.
No, I've got it on a good note. You were very safe and stayed within the speed limits.
Okay, well, gentlemen, that's great. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really good.
Tom, it was excellent. Yeah, funny fact. It's definitely my favourite fact of the day.
So if you have enjoyed it, please do rate, review, and subscribe. But this week being National Lorry Week, if people want to get in touch with you, Tom, and they want to find out about National Lorry Week, where should they go?
So they can visit the website, which is www.nationallorryweek.co.uk. Alternatively, you can obviously get in touch with us via Twitter, at RHA News or at Tom Cornwell _. Use the hashtag National Lorry Week. and get involved and join in.
Excellent. And where can people find your lorry that's travelling around the country?
They will have to wait and see.
Okay.
As to where that appears next, but certainly if they follow those Twitter handles that I just mentioned, they will see where it's been so far.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I was going to say, I look forward to hopefully seeing it in the East Anglia area and taking a couple of photographs so I can help share this and have a promotion.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Driver Hire podcast, and thank you very much.
And as goodbye from myself, Gary Richards at the Colchester office.
And from me, Tony Goacher at the Croydon and Sutton office. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us at thedriverhirepodcast.co.uk.
Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.